files. Now he does have JavaScript in here as well, and he has what we call the CSS um, files, which is basically your style. It's your cascading style system, they call it, I think, and it's a third type that he'll use, and those are a large part of what we'll encounter. You know, we'll have an HTML file, which is basically your web page, okay? Then you have a CSS file, which is how you're, think of it as your style page for how your web page is going to look. It does things like sets font sizes and sets placement of text and things like that, and it goes with this HTML file. Just like for example, when you're using ArcMap, um, if you look in Windows Explorer, you'll notice that you have more than one file that goes with a shape file, and we talked about this last fall. You have a shape file, but it will end in a .shp extension, but you also have a you'll have a DBF file, which is your attribute table file, and you'll have a whole host of other files that goes with that. So you may have 5 or 6 files that goes with each shape file. Well, think of this in a way as similar as that. You've got your HTML file, which this again is just a basic KML, so I'm getting a little bit ahead of us, but I just wanted to give you the logic here. You have an HTML file, and then you have a .css file that goes with that, and then you'll have a .js for JavaScript file that also goes with that. And those 3 files will form what you're working with when you click on the HTML file and open it up in a website. So again, it's getting a little ahead of us, but just wanted to point that out. Um, Here, this is just he's just giving you a basic example of a real small, simple KML file, just so you can kind of see the tags that are in it. And got talking about tags, that's what got me off on the HTML. But anyway, you'll see there's an opening tag, okay, the place marks exist here, and then there's what we call a closing tag. And the closing tag is very similar to the opening tag, except it just has this slash in it, okay? So you've got your brackets. Those, anytime you see the brackets, you know that's a tag. And if you don't see a slash and you just see a text, you know that's an opening tag. And then nearly all opening tags are going to have a closing tag. And you'll notice that he does a nice job of indenting the code here so that it makes it easy to kind of see where the tags are opening and closing. Now, it starts to get a little confusing when you add in the fact that some tags don't have a closing tag. There are some that can exist with just basically the opening tag is it's sort of like an assignment tag. It's just declaring something, so it doesn't have to have a closing tag. But a lot of the tags do have closing tags, so you'll see that, and you'll see that again in the text. He does a really good job of taking what we have in the electronic files and he shows them in a listing here in the book, so we can examine it, highlight it, things like that before you ever even work with it in the electronic arena. Another thing that he does is you'll notice he bolds, like this here, this coordinates tag is in bold. Okay, it doesn't show up as good on the screen here as it does in the book, but the bold information is stuff that he is going to talk about right after that is displayed in the book. And I like the style there he uses, because you'll see as we progress, whenever he customizes or starts adding to information, he'll bold just the new section. So it makes it real easy to find in the code the part that he's talking about in the explanation. Because as he builds on these things throughout the book, it it would take forever to re-explain it every time. So he's going to explain it, and then he goes on to another section, and he'll add a little bit to it in bold, and he'll talk about just that part that's in bold. So that's the way we're kind of building as we work through the book. So it's pretty intuitive once you start using it, and I think you'll pick up on it right away. But just wanted to point that out. And so in this simple KML file, we've just got a tag here indicating a place mark, and you see that so basically the block I've highlighted goes with the place mark. Okay, you need everything that's between this opening and closing tag and the place mark to describe a point location, a place. Okay. Then we need a name, so he gives it a name tag. And in this case, you see the closing name tag is right at the end of the name. So there's a little bit of flexibility in where you put that. In other words, you don't have to go to a new line to put the closing tag every time. That would just take up extra space. So he's giving this location a name, is calling it Crater Lake. And then we have a description tag, and it's basically just some text in between that describes that location. So we've got Crater Lake. It's a deep blue lake in the Cascade Mountains. Okay, and then we've got a point tag, and in the point tag, okay, that's where our coordinates information comes in, and so this is just our spatial information, so that the program that's going to use this KML file knows where to place that marker point. Okay, and the coordinates, notice that you do have to use the negative sign, and he's got a nice graph on the in the text that does a good job of showing this. Let me just bounce over to it real quick. Oops. There we go. A nice graphic that displays, your positives and negatives. So, of course, we're located here, and we are to the left of the prime meridian. So we're on the negative side of that prime meridian, which is our longitude, and we're north of the equator, and so we're in the positive direction of that in our latitude. So we've got a negative for longitude and a positive for the latitude. And you do have to remember to put that negative sign in there. Now he points out that you can use Google Maps to read in a KML file, and it will pop that on the map for you, just as a quick demonstration for it. And he has it linked. If you check in the book, he has it linked to his website, which in this I'm trying to highlight it for you here. And so if you type in that information in the search area on your Google Maps, you should get something similar to this page. Realize this was done in 2009, and so Google Maps has changed a little bit, so it won't look exactly like this. But give that a try if you haven't already. And what it will do is it zooms you into the lake really, really close, because he's got his point right in the center of the lake. And let me see if I can pull that up and demonstrate it. So I've opened up Google Maps, and I haven't entered yet, but I've typed in the link here to his site. Okay, now I'm going to hit enter, and you watch how it loads, and it loads in, and like I say, it zooms in really close to the point. So at first you're wondering what's going on. You notice the area is indicated over here on the left, and you can turn that point on and off basically. And you can click on the link here, and it will pop up the information, the little info window we call it, with the name information at the top in bold, and then it's got the text information here. And so, and if you zoom out a little bit, you can see that it is in the middle of the lake. Okay. So the way this worked in this example is we opened the KML file from the server that the author had set up on his site, and that's what this address was here in the top. And that's fine for the demonstration purposes. But like I said earlier, if you were to click on the file directly rather than typing it in that box and clicked on the file on your end in a folder, it would open up in Google Earth. So let me just show you that. I'll double click on it. And on my end, unfortunately, it opens in another window. So I'm going to have to pull it over here for you. Okay, and you can see that it, just like with the Google Maps site, it opened and it zoomed in real close on the lake. So we can a little more easily zoom out in Google Earth. And it opened in satellite view for default. And we have basically the same thing here then. Just little different font, a little different look to it here. But the same file is now opened locally in Google Earth rather than over the internet as a KML file in Google Maps. And of course this is pretty neat because in Google Earth you get all the little bells and whistles. You've got the photos and so forth that you can open up of the area. But again, where our focus is trying to get this stuff onto the internet to do actual internet mapping. So we want to be able to produce these maps for users to what we call consume via the internet. And not everybody would have Google Earth and be able to open it like this. So I'm going to close Google Earth down, and we'll go back to the map. Now, in this first chapter, he's just showing you a couple of very basic things, just trying to make a point about what a KML file is and so forth. But let me open this file just so we have it in the book there with the code. But I'm going to show you how you can, well, actually, let me back up. Before I open the file, let me show you a way you can actually open your local file in Google Maps. This is a little bit of a roundabout way, but it at least leads into an example that we can do with the code here. So what I'm going to do in Google Maps is I'm going to I'm going to open a new window actually and just go to Google Maps again. That way we can keep the other one open if we need it. And what we can do is, assuming you have your account and everything set up and you're logged in, then you can click on My Places and it will load maps that you've been working with. And we can go to Create a Map. When you're in Create a Map, you'll notice you have something that wasn't available in the last screen. When you just go to Google Maps, you don't see this. But when you're actually creating a map, you have an option here to import. And I'm going to click on that. And it will let you import a KML, KMZ, or GeoRSS feed. And it will actually import the data into Google Maps for you. So let's click on the Browse. And we'll go over to where we have our KML file stored. And I've got mine on the C drive under GIS-211. And I'm going to go into my BGMM folder that I created so that we're working with our editable data rather than the archive. And let's just open the KML file that way. It loads it in the dialog there, and then we can say upload from file. And what it will do, you'll notice, is it bounces over to the site just like it did when it pulled it off of the server. And it actually imported the contents of that KML file into Google Maps. Now I'm going to pull the contents of the KML file. I've opened it here, bounce it from my other window. I've opened it into a program called Notepad Plus. And this is a pretty neat program that's available for free. I'll try to remember to put a link to it on the site, but you can just Google Notepad Plus. And I recommend that you download this program. It's very much like Notepad, but I guess like the plus implies, it's got some added features to it, and it just is a lot more user-friendly. It also does things like automatically numbers lines of code that you have, and it will highlight when you click on, like I click on the opening tag, and it will highlight the opening and closing tag automatically for me. It's basically a combination of an editor and code editor, and it recognizes a variety of different languages, and it has a lot of plugins available and things. So it's just a really neat program, and it's available for free. And so it's something you might want to try to download at some point and use it instead of Notepad. But in the meantime, if you don't have it, you can do the same thing in Notepad. So we'll have that open now, and you can see the code again. This is just what we saw in the book, okay? But what I wanted to show you is um, we can go in and this is something what we're going to do in the future chapters quite a bit, but we can just to show you how this works on the fly, we can go in and edit some of this, and let's just say, for simplicity, um, let's just say Crater Lake National Park, okay, and for a title, and in here, let's just say a very deep blue lake in the Cascade Mountains, a beautiful place to visit. Okay, and we'll save this. Now I'm going to save it. I've still got my, now keep in mind, I've still got my original file in the archive, so I can just save this and be fine. But just so I don't overwrite my existing version that I'm playing around with, I'm going to just save this and put the my in front of it, just like we did with our folder. And note this is, it knows where I opened it from, so it's already got it routed to the my BGMM in the chapter 1. And I'm just going to stick in front of the file name just my and save. And that, let me move this other window over so you can see. And so I saved it and added this file here. Okay, so this has got my changes in it that I made. And now let's go back out to our Google Maps and let's see if we can. And what I'm going to do, I selected the point that we imported basically a minute ago, and I'm going to delete that. And notice before I do though, here is the text that we had, a deep blue lake in the mountains. And delete that, and let's import again. And it popped up wanting to know if I wanted to stay on the page, which I said yes. And we'll go to browse again. And luckily it remembers the folders that you used previously. So when you're doing these little tweaks in that, it's kind of handy because the programs will remember where you were last. So it makes it a little faster. So this time we'll select the one we just created and upload that file. And you can see that it loaded, and if we click on the place mark, we can see the new text that we added. So, and you can see the title changed to Crater Lake National Park. So, so that's just a demonstration of editing the KML file. Now we could have also added more places to that. We would need to get the coordinates for those, but we could have added more places and stuck in that file. You could have done a variety of things with it. I just wanted you to see how you can actually make the changes yourself on the fly and then see your results. Now, it's a little bit tedious the way we're doing it right now because we're relying on Google Maps to import these files. When we get into chapter 2, things will work a little smoother. But I just wanted you to see kind of how that works. And of course from here we could do additional markups in Google Maps anyway. We could add more points, we could change the text here, we could add a photo of the place to it if we wanted to, and all the things that you've already done with Google Maps and Google Earth. But again, the focus here is more on doing those kinds of things with the code and having it show up automatically on your client's end so that they don't have to do anything. So we won't do those right now, but so in the book, the rest of chapter 1, he basically just gives you an example of an XML file and does it using the GORSS in Atom versus the RSS 2.0, which he explains a little bit about. We won't delve into much detail on that. He's just trying to make some points about these different formats and standards. And then he gets into, you know, which you should use, and he goes back to the KML option for most cases because it's more widely used right now. So that pretty much takes care of chapter 1. Again, take a good look at the latitude and longitude information, and you might want to go into the appendix and look at that a little bit. It's pretty interesting. And also take note that he's got boxes scattered throughout the text where he has some optional information. And I recommend you take a look at those. He does a good job, like I said earlier, of explaining the code and changes in the code and things like that. Here he's referring to a couple handy utilities you might want to look into. And some of these links you'll find don't work. They've already expired. This coordinate finder maplet, for example, I wasn't able to get to that. It looks like it is a program that somebody had written specially for being able to get latitude and longitude points, and with the code changes in Google Maps, it doesn't pop up any longer. So it used to be a little handy utility you could have that stayed with your Google Maps. Anytime you went to Google Maps, you had this up in the corner, and you could click and just pull the coordinates of any point that you had selected. But what you can do, you can use Google Earth. Works really well for getting coordinates because it keeps up with you. It's quick. Of course, you can always start up ArcMap and load some files in for base data and that kind of thing to find coordinates. But I recommend using Google Earth because it just seems a lot quicker to me. And you can type in a place name, and it will bounce right over to that, and you can real easily pull the coordinate information for that. So anyway, be sure to take a look at these little gray boxes as you go through the chapters. And one final point here before we leave this chapter is where he mentions the KML. For some reason, okay, we tend to think of coordinate information in latitude and longitude. And so with the KML files, you have longitude and latitude rather than latitude and longitude. So notice the negative number is first for longitude. And that's just the reverse of the way you usually find it. And in most programs, you'll see it referred to as latitude and longitude. So it's, I guess, Google's way of wanting to be unique for some reason. And then there's a third number in there that is basically a zoom level. And it shows, it ranges from, he points out, from like 0 to like 15 or 20 or something like that. And that's basically it refers to the level of detail that you're going to have in your window. Okay, and with that, that pretty much finishes up chapter 1. So now things start to get exciting. We'll move into chapter 2, and I think you'll like this. Okay, in chapter 2, things start to get really interesting. In chapter 2, things start to get the various pieces together because we start to put more of a complete pieces together. And so into more of a complete product. The author walks you through different stages. The author walks you through. Does a very good job, I think, of explaining things. And does a very good job, I think, of explaining things like most of you are. Again, if it can be a little confusing at first. So it can be a little confusing at first. A little bit. See if I can try to clear things up a little bit. Here is he'll walk you through what's going on here. Is he'll walk you through files that we're dealing with. Remember, there's three different types of files that we're dealing with. And so here I've got my folder switched over to chapter 2. Here I've got my folder switched over to chapter 2. Notice I'm still in the these are the files that come with the download, and these are the files listed in the book with the download. And each one you'll notice are listed in the book again. Under each one you'll notice in the book here listing 2-1. So he's put them named them in a way that the files are in the same order. Named them in a way that the files are in the same order. Find them in the book, which is kind of neat. Directory. Now the only confusing part is again he builds on these files. The only confusing part is again he builds on these files. So you'll see different versions. There are 3 different HTML files. Really, these are 3 different JavaScript intended to do the same thing. These are all just different versions of the files to do the same thing in the book. Just different versions of the files as he's built them in the book. So with your HTML file. But with your HTML file, think of that as your main page. That you have a website is going to be an HTML file. You have a website is your home HTML file. Think of it like as your home page. This listing 2-1 is our listing 2-1 is our home page, and he shows you the code for that a little bit closer. And let me see if I can zoom into that. And notice how I've got my window set up here. And notice how I've got my window set up here. My browser window as well. Let me go ahead and open my browser window as well. So you can kind of see that, how I've got that laid out in here. Okay, I've tried to set them up to where it's easy for me to manipulate. Okay, I've tried to set them up to where it's easy for me to manipulate one aspect or another and not have to. So what I've done, and you might want to try this, and it's a. So what I've done, and you might want to try this, and it's. But you get the hang of it pretty quick. It seems a little awkward. This works best. But you get the hang of it pretty quick. Desktop. This works best, but it also really works good if you have. But it also really works good if you dedicate one monitor, two monitors, to just your basically dedicate browser window to just your browser monitor to your and then folder directory, your other monitor to your Notepad folder directory. But I'm assuming in this case that you only have one monitor. So but I'm assuming in this case that you only have one monitor. If I had only had one, I tried to set mine up as if I had only had one. So I've got up here in the top right my browser, and I'm opening Firefox. I've got up here in the top right my browser, and I'm opening Firefox. Firefox, Windows Explorer, or Internet Explorer, Windows Explorer, Chrome, Internet Explorer. I don't use Chrome very much. And Google Chrome. It doesn't seem as good. I don't use Chrome very much, but I do use Firefox. It doesn't seem as good to me, but I do use Firefox and Explorer both quite a bit, and they both seem to work really well with all of this. And they both seem to work really well. The same with the Notepad that I mentioned earlier. The same with the Notepad that I mentioned earlier. You can see I've got it on the Notepad, and I've got my folder. See, I've got it open here on the bottom, and I've got my folder. What's neat about this is I can take and drop, drag and drop. This is I instead of having to go to file, drag and drop, instead of having to go to file and click on this first file. For example, I drag it down here into this first file, and I can just drag it and drop it in there. My Notepad, it leaves my file where it is, and drop it in there. Opens it up. It leaves my file where it is. It basically just opens it up. It's just a shortcut. So I can do that. I can open it, drag it and drop it, and so I can see the code. I can drag it and drop it and open an HTML file. I can drag it likewise since it's an HTML file. I can drag it over into my browser. In this case, nothing's opening up. And the reason is because the code is not complete. And the reason is because the code is not complete. He's still building it. So this HTML file he's still building there. So this HTML file is not opening anything, but it's not it's referring. It's not opening anything because the files that it's referring to are not complete. If I open the second HTML, which is a little further in the book, if I open the second HTML, which is a little further in the book, and drag it and drop it, complete product, then it opens just fine. Just didn't want you to get confused if you tried to open the just didn't want you to get confused if you tried to. And if you're reading this through the book, it may make a little more sense. And if you're reading this through the book, it may make a little more sense. You can see that the second one did open. It's not opening. We won't get ahead of ourselves. See that the second one did open for now. We won't get ahead of ourselves. Let me show you on the code here now. So let me show you zoom in a little bit here on the code. So if we zoom in a little bit here on the code, like he has it in the book, and then basically these few lines of code here is what it takes to make a web page. These few lines of code here is what it takes to make a web page. What this code here is doing is it's setting up this code here is doing putting the standards setting up and basically using the W3C format for using the W3C format, using the Google Maps, using it's pulling in Google Maps CSS file. It's pulling in CSS file. This link line, you'll see a file name here. File name listing O2 underscore O2 CSS listing O2 underscore O2 CSS right here. And if you look in the directory, we can open that file as well. And we can open that file as well. And it opens it in a new window, which is another neat thing about Notepad. It opens it in a new window, which is another neat thing about Notepad. It still has my original file in there. I can click on the tab and bounce back to the HTML file. And so what I wanted to back to the HTML is how it's referencing what I wanted to show you is how it's referencing the files. It's referencing that. So it's CSS file. It's referencing that. Basically, when you get to that point of the code. Okay, whenever when you get to that point in the code, by dragging it in we execute this HTML file, by dragging it in this line of code, and it opens, tells it to open this file here, and it opens, tells it to open this information, and which applies this information. Remember, I mentioned earlier, CSS file is basically setting up is basically setting up web page. Your format had a lot of HTML files. You could have lot of one CSS file and it could format all of those. Have just one CSS file and it could format all of those CSS for you. streamlines your formatting. So it keeps us basically having to put the code you see here. It keeps us basically having to put the code you see here. Now in our example, we're only using one web page. Now in our example, it wouldn't be a big deal to put the CSS one web page. So data in there. It wouldn't be a big deal to put the author's separating data in there because he's assuming that the author's separating expand because he's assuming that you're going to expand this onto a more elaborate website system. So for now, we're not doing that, so forth. That's why. So for now.